a good thing. It's a good thing. All right, but it can be hard to keep track of. Right? So these are areas of unmet need. And these different biomarkers, I'm not going to go through them because they are just, that's not for the purpose of this talk, but just to give you an idea of what these biomarkers are doing in each of these spaces that I showed you. How can you determine who is not going to have prostate cancer versus who is going to get it? These can help you know, and the urologists will love these because they will know, should I go get a biopsy or not? You know, or just wait on this. Then when they get disease, you can use these to tell you, should this patient be on active surveillance or just watching and see how it's going, or should you actually activate treatment right away? And some of these biomarkers have been proven to be very valid, and we use them a lot, okay? And again, so these are just examples. So Oncotype DX will tell you, once you have your screening done, you get a diagnosis, it tells you treatment decision. Do you want to do active surveillance or treat immediately? Now that genomic testing can help you determine that. And this is based on a bunch of genes that have been thought to be very important. And as I told you, it's not a magic bullet here, okay? A bunch of genes that are thought to be important, and it's not inherited either. A lot of damage going on throughout the lifespan, and you can use these to actually help you know who has aggressive kind of not. And this is a cool thing. The upper panel is telling you, now what's my time check? Just so I'm good, okay. The upper panel is telling us what clinical information alone tells you. So the green says you are very, very low risk. Go home, enjoy life with your family, don't worry about this cancer, it's not going to harm you. That's what clinicians, the clinical information tells you. Come back in here, we'll evaluate again, we'll let you know if you should treat or not. Low risk, about the same, but good purple population there tells you that you're low risk. Versus low, intermediate, further amount to high risk, that will say, you know, you got to treat right away. You can't wait. When you lay on genomic testing onto it, some of the purples moved into the very low risk group. Some of the purples moved over into the low intermediate, and some of the low intermediate came back into the low risk group. So you basically use genomic to re-stratify the patients, and now you do a better job. Because if you were told that you don't need to do anything, and you were that purple person who ended up here, that's mismanagement. If you were also here, and they started to treat you, and yet you should have been very low risk and have a few more, 5 years more treated, you've overtreated this person and give the person side effects. There's no free lunch. Whatever treatment you get, you pay a price for it. Even Tylenol, pay a price for it. Okay, there is always, you know, let's think about medicine. Listen, whatever you ate this morning, okay, I guarantee you there's some bacteria that you ingested. Now, I can guarantee you it's there is bacteria, you ate some bacteria, okay? And your body's got to fight it and take it out of the system. It's not going to let you get sick. Sometimes it does, depending on the kind of bacteria, you get a stomach bug, right? But not this food, right? So I'm telling you, eating food is a side effect to it. I don't understand why we think that it's a free lunch. So long as you take anything to your body, you have a side effect, whether it's medication or food. The issue is that your body has the ability to work against some of those things that are we call it subclinical, meaning that you don't notice it. But your body does this work, okay? And some of the things that become clinical because your body got a little bit, tired and needs additional help. So that's kind of where we want to be, that if you don't need treatment, we don't need to treat you. If you do it, if you do need it, we want to really get it treated. And that's how we kind of re-stratify patients. This is not about spending money. This is also cost savings. And that's the logic of genomic medicine. Because if I were to treat all those people in the middle, that's still a lot. I could have saved almost half of those patients and not treated them. And that's also, cost savings. And if someone was here and needed more aggressive treatment, that's life saving. So it's not about cost. Genomic medicine is not just bringing more cost to healthcare. It's actually doing personalized care, and it balances out so that each person is treated appropriately. And that's the message here. It's not just one new gig, one new best thing to make things more expensive, but actually making sure that if I can tell who needs treatment, that's the person that's supposed to get it. I think that's the way we should go. And this is a passion of mine, so I'm going to go over it a little bit more because this is kind of still the same story here. Is that it's not about cost, it's not necessarily more cost, but the sad story is that most of these cool stuff were developed mainly men of European origin. And I have to tell you this, I don't blame one side, I blame both sides, because when I'm in my clinic and I see non-European patients and I'm trying to tell my research, there's always a hesitance of research. Because, of course, there's some history to it, but in 2017, if we don't get engaged in research in the minority communities, we are getting ourselves out of the game. That's my message. You have to get involved. You have to pass it, and you have to talk about it, and you have to also get involved, because otherwise, what do you expect? And that's the message I carry across my patients, who I expect to really get engaged, because we cannot sit back and always point fingers. You got to get engaged, you got to get involved, right? And so that's how we can change it. And the reason why I'm passionate about this is that the statistics is scary, okay? What about you and me? Globally, black men have the highest incidence and mortality of prostate cancer. Globally, I'm not talking about US alone. The highest incidence, right? African American men get prostate cancer at a younger age and have more adverse features, meaning after surgery, even after before and after treatment. Yes, there are some reasons for that. There's socioeconomic, access to healthcare, epidemiologic, but there's also genomic and biologic differences. I'm here to prove that to you in a little bit. Because if this is the stats, okay? This is non-controversial. For each person that gets prostate cancer, men of African origin are 1.6 times more likely to get prostate cancer. This is just incidence. Just incidence. It has nothing to do with access. It has nothing to do with whatever. It's just, what's your risk of getting prostate cancer as a person of color? It's almost 1.6 fold. Me, almost twice. If you do the rounding off, right? And to die from it is almost threefold. Okay, so this is just the stats, right? Of course, mortality has different factors. It could be access or that incidence. You can't explain incidence by access, right? That you can't explain it away, right? And then some of the controversial things is access comes in, because if you treat some of them well, based on the genomics I told you, not all black men will have aggressive disease. No, some of them have good disease, so they will do all the treatment. Some will not. But it's important because that has implications in screening, in policy, right? In active surveillance, and also in treatment recommendations, all three, if that's true. So the United States Preventive Task Force in 2012 said men don't have to get PSA screening anymore, because there were 2 studies done, one in Europe and one in the US, on PSA screening, how screening impacts survival. And the results was like, no, screening doesn't help. So in the US, they said no more screening. The Europeans, on the other hand, said, I think we saw a benefit. So they said, well, screening is still required. From 2012 up to 2017, all of us in that field began to provide data to the government, to other agencies, that the data was flawed because it wasn't done appropriately. We had a lot of other publications that came through in the last 5 years. So this April of 2017, they changed those recommendations that in men of African origin and people that have family history, they need PSA screening, because the data was compelling. Now, it took a group of us to do the research into that issue to change policy. So data drives policy, and if we don't have the data, we don't change policy. You can talk all you want, you have to provide the data in order to change policy. And the data means that we have to get involved in research, we have to get involved in research, get the data, and then advocate for change. That's how it goes. And so that's really what happened, and we see a change. And this is where it's important. When you look on the continent of Africa, we got the same problem. Nigeria, Ghana, Senegalese, all of them are having high mortality of prostate cancer. 2 different people living separated by almost several hundreds of years, still having the same problem. It's got to be some biology involved. Okay, so this is a study done from NCI, with a colleague of mine, who is now in Stanford, and she looked at the US cohort in Africa and also in Ghana, where we have some collaborations. And you can tell this is a 4th increase in prostate cancer, 1.6. It rises up in among African American men. And in a totally different set of patients in a different continent, in Ghana, they have a high 5.84, right? So this really talks about biology, right? Because then maybe there is something we can learn from the genomics that can help us treat appropriately, maybe recommend treatment in that cohort. So that's where a lot of my research is focused on. So we did our first research. This is a research I led in 2015 in JCO, where we looked at African American men compared with non-African American men from Thomas Jefferson University, Sloan Kettering, Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins. We looked at the genomic landscape, and this is an interesting picture here. On the far left, right here, you see the blue line is African American cohort. The red line is non-African American cohort, and the axis is the risk of having advanced disease. And the top is a biomarker, so it's called ERK. So this biomarker was discovered that is a good predictor of disease. It doesn't work in African American men, because if you look at the blue line, as the biomarker level increases, actually goes the opposite way. So if I was going to use that biomarker in clinic, I'll be missing the African American community, right? Because it's not going to work for them. The middle one is showing another biomarker called androgen receptor, and you can tell that it works very well in the lower race where you have the blue line really up, but then it levels off, becomes the same. And then this one, the other biomarker is pretty much the same. This means that if I just rely on one thing and I don't make sure I validate it in different populations, I might be using the wrong thing and may not work on populations. And that's the first study that came out, became a very important eye-opener. And we got some funding to do this further in different populations. Again, this is probably just some color thing, but if you just focus on this, the third row for both, right, this is non-African American, this African American, look, the red and blue proportions are off, right? There's more red here and there's more blue here. This is subtypes, molecular subtypes. And that can tell you that even in a high-risk category, the genomics are different. And so personalized medicine becomes very important in treating. Okay, this is some of the cool work that is going on. We have an international collaboration all around the globe. Bahamas, Senegal, Ghana, US, all kinds of universities looking at this issue because we got to get resources together. This is a global problem. Right? We are working together to solve that problem. So that's how we can change the face of medicine. So we have a study that we are doing called a Van study, kind of a cool name, but it's just trying to really validate some of these genomic patients. And it's been going very well. Again, these things are put up there because we need to go to the community and talk to people. We need to engage. I can't sit in my lab all day and expect people to know about it. I'm here because I love to share this story. I'm glad you guys invited me. But we all have to get involved, one way, shape, or form, with the talents that God has given you and be able to push this field forward. And at this point, I can take some questions, anything that you guys have to say. Again, it's a big collective effort. We have different groups involved all around the globe, and this is how we get a breakdown. Okay, so thank you very much.
Any questions? Okay.
I don't need a microphone.
Okay.
I just want to ask you something. The oncogene,
Yes.
when it's in the late stage, why isn't DNA testing done either in utero or before the age of 5 years old to see who would be predisposed? You know who is predisposed to this. However, couldn't something be done sooner? I mean, either in utero or maybe before 5 years old, there's DNA testing that's done to see who is predisposed to this. Is that looked into to see, what
Excellent question. I think the answer to this is more political than I'm comfortable with. Think about it. If you were to do that for, say, 5-year-olds, before the age of 5, we do a genomic screening, who do you think will begin to use it the most? The doctors or the insurance companies? Because now, they get access to it and say, oh, wow, you have this nutritional profile by age 5, ooh, your premiums go high. So now it can be used in a very diabolic way, and that was not the intent. And I think this has been the pushback for an initiative like that, because people are just scared that a group of people will label, hands on that information, and use it against the general public. Because now it becomes, based on the genomics, we gotta shift how much we're gonna pay for insurance premiums, because we know by age 50, you might have more problems than another person. And that's dangerous, right? So, and you cannot know how the information will be sealed. And so maybe if it can be, now they're doing it on an individual basis. I have families that say, I want to get it done. And that's your choice. You pay for it. But in order to make it something that is global, I think we have to have better security systems and really be able to manage where that information goes. I think that's really the main issue here.
Thank you.
It's a great thing we could have done, but
Thank you.
yeah, I think I had another hand. So that's a great question. The ACS says by age 45, every young man should at least have a baseline PSA. The Neurology Association says age 50. Anywhere from 45 to 50, I recommend a baseline PSA for everyone, whether you are a man of African origin or not. If you have a family history, that's actually even more important. Without a family history, I'll say age 50, just have a baseline. Right? No one in your family has prostate cancer or anything like that. A baseline PSA is great. And then, another 5 years, maybe another one. Because it's not something you should be doing every year. And obviously not before age 40 or 45. So that's really what yes.
Sorry. I'm
Oh, sorry, all right. Well, I'll just let you do that. Yeah.
Okay, I just have a simple question that, it's a very precise medicine, personalized, but basically the pharmaceuticals doesn't like it.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals, yes.
Yes, so is there any change in their attitude? Because it should be the future.
Yes. So, excellent question. Thank you for bringing that question up. So, pharmaceutical companies were against it because they were initially afraid that it's going to drop their market. Because if you can give the drug to 100 people and now you say, oh, only 20 will benefit from it, I lose money. But on the contrary, what happened was that in the last 15 years, the National Institute of Health got frustrated because all the targeted treatments were not working. they will start the phase 1 studies, it looks good, phase 2, maybe they do phase 3, 1,000 patients, no benefit. And we're wasting millions of dollars on medicines that were just not working. The question was, why? Why are we wasting so much money? So they stopped funding, and we went back and started using genomic medicine and realized that those patients that had the mutations did very well, and those that didn't have the mutation actually did worse. So guess what? They canceled out. Because we get plus 2 on some people and minus 2 on some people, they be 0. And then they started to say, wow, if we're supposed to get our drugs on the market, we better start to use personalized medicine because we are actually going to lose because no one is going to use our drugs anymore. So now the industries are beginning to move over to now say, let's do genomic testing. Let's find out the patients are going to respond. Let's give to them because we are losing this battle. It came from just failed studies over the last years, and people got frustrated. Right? And so it's changing. I can tell you all the studies are running, there's another study running, DMS is paying for all the genomics to be done up front because they know that that's the way to go. You cannot just give someone some drug and say, let's see what happens. That's history. Okay? All right.
So you discovered that African American are more susceptible to aggressive disease. Do you understand why?
So that's a very good question. That's part of what we're studying. I think we think it's multifactorial. We think there are some genes that are enriched, and I have to use a BRCA I talked about as an example. Who knows where BRCA was first identified? Do you know the population they were first identified in? I want to see how many of you know biology, history of biology. BRCA mutation, which population was it first identified in? Sorry? If you don't know it, you can guess. You should know it, right? It's from the Ashkenazi Jewish population. It was a Jewish group, a Jewish tribe, an Ashkenazi Jewish population. That's where BRCA mutation was first discovered. And they realized that that group of people in the Jewish community enriched for the BRCA gene. It was an enrichment. And then when we discovered that, from that, this was several years ago, we realized that all women all around the world that had a mutation were also at risk. And guess what? We also discovered that black women actually had more of that mutation as well in the United States. And then we went on to identify that people with BRCA mutations actually did better with some kind of treatment called PARP inhibitors. So in the last 30 years, we went from discovering a mutation in the population, the Jewish population, like an epidemiologic study, all the way to now having drugs that work better for women in that category. So we think that's the same thing with the whole risk of prostate cancer in black men. It's all about enrichment. We think there's a genomic biomarker that is enriched in the population, but any other ethnic group that has that mutation will be at risk as well. And as we do research in an enriched population, we can understand the Hispanic population with that genomic profile will also have increased risk, white men, Asian, whatever. Because we see aggressive disease in all spectrum, right? It's not only in black men. We have aggressive disease. I have patients who are, from Asia. Asia is supposed to have low levels of prostate cancer. And I have this patient that I'm treating now with rare aggressive disease, and he's Asian. And like, why did he get it? I don't know. He might have a gene that is more for aggressive profile, even though it's in the like less than 1% of the Asian population, right? So that's how we study genomics. It's enrichment of markers in subpopulations that helps define that. So.
Yes, and as you were saying, genomics contributes about just 10%, right?
That's germline, yes.
Okay, so the 90% you said is attributed to our environment, right? So what advice, being specialized in this field, with regards to our diet and environment, what advice do you have to give us?
Thank you. It's a great point. So I'm actually immersed in a department of, even though I'm a radiation oncologist by training, I did a fellowship in cancer epidemiology, and that's why I did that, because we've spent so much time on treating after the fact, reactive versus proactive, right? And what you talked about is a very important thing about being proactive, right? Smoking is the biggest insult to the body. I don't know how many, it's unfortunate that it's hard to break that habit, but I tell you, if there's anything worse you could do to your body long term, it's smoking. Because it's almost like if you were told that you're going to have an investment, and you're going to introduce something to your life that will give you a negative debt on your returns. Systematically, no one will do that. So at age 17, 16, whatever that age was, you will introduce something to your life that will systematically drop your returns on your, no matter what you do, you can do all the right things, but this negative factor is going to definitely shorten you. Now, why would anyone do that? That's one key environmental factor that we've known for years, but we can't kick it, right? And there are a lot of other things like that, diet, nutrition, everything like that. This is why education becomes so important. Because I have doctors that still smoke. Why do they do it? They know everything, but they still smoke, right? Because it's not about knowledge at that point. It's about what the education in the early stages, how you were formed to understand certain things that translates. Now that you know the habit, it's hard to kick the habit, right? So in this stage, you begin to educate your mind and educate yourself to understand the consequences and take the right action, whether in proper exercise and diet. Don't wait until you say, oh, well, now I'm 40, so I'm going to live healthy. Why? Enough said.
So does breastfeeding reduce the cancer of the breast? Yes. If it does, tell all the women to do that.
So, he's asking about breastfeeding and breast cancer. Actually, breastfeeding is protective. Now, I think you asked the question about, so there are certain key, especially women's health, certain key things about that contribute to breast cancer. The data actually is that late breastfeeding or late childbearing is actually contributed linked to breast cancer, not the other way around. So there is also a correlation with early detection. So if you're breastfeeding, you are likely to detect breast lesions earlier than that. So that might be some of that. So a lot of it is correlative studies is not always accurate because we call it early onset, like lead bias, lead time bias, right? So that's what causes maybe that picture, but it's not necessarily true that if you breastfeed, you get breast cancer. No, it's actually earlier detection because you're actually having self-breast examination by default, right? That's someone who's not breastfeeding. So that's kind of some of the data there. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Me.
Yes.
All right, so my question is, my uncle was recently diagnosed with a carcinoid tumor.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and I guess it did
Metastasize.
in his liver. So now he's supposed to start radiation and chemo. What's the percentage that the radiation and the chemo is going to actually respond properly? Yeah.
So it's a great question. And again, like I told you, it's as a physician, percentage is a percentage, right? Now, but the important thing is understanding the mechanism of radiation and chemotherapy. Radiation is the same concept. Radiation simply does this. I irradiate a tumor, and I create DNA damage in the tumor. And my goal is that by radiating that tumor a little bit every day, or whatever regimen I use, that the normal tissues, because they are programmed to repair the damage, they're going to have side effects, we get a little bit of irritation, but repair the damage, and the tumor cells cannot. So by that, I would over time kill all the tumor tissues and allow the normal tissues to become healthy. That's a function and the purpose of radiation. So something that is actually supposed to be a carcinogen is actually therapeutic. It's weird, but it works. It works really well. Now, and so that's how we use it. So yes, there's going to be a response. The question is that if you have 1 million cells, and you irradiate those 1 million cells, and even one of them remains cancerous, by having an ability to repair, it may be another 5-10 years, and you may have the recurrence, right? So it's hard to tell that. That's a tough thing about the numbers, because you don't know whether you can get total eradication or not, because you have to balance it against how toxic the treatment is going to be. Every cancer can be cured at the expense of the host. You know that, right? Yeah, and so that's how much can you save the host against that? Because the tricky thing about cancer, and everybody should know this, that it's a misnomer, okay? If you have a bacterial infection, I can give you an antibiotic and I'll eradicate the bacteria from the body, right? Because the bacteria is not your own cells, it's a foreign cell. Cancer is your own cells that are aberrant, that are not behaving well. They are crazy cells that belong to you. It's a different ballgame. So it's not as though I can just eradicate. It's like you're trying to tell me to eradicate my ear by some means. No, it's your cells. It's just not behaving right? And so cancer is a different concept from a lot of other diseases that we get confused about. Because every other thing you can give something else that will just eradicate it and you're free of it, right? Not tumors. And that's where it gets dangerous, because each cell, if they don't function right, it just takes a amount of time to grow and divide because it's just your cells. So it's a little bit, anyway, I know I didn't fully answer your question because, again, you can tell that I don't give numbers because I know numbers are not. Yes, there's always that. I never take a hope away. There's always potential for cure, no matter what it is. I've seen things that we know not to be curative have long-term survivors, and that's the goal. But we think genomics can help us. Because if we,
They say that's supposed to be like a cancer that
yes. Cancer rates are very, very slow, very, very slow. So that's it's not a lung cancer, one of those that actually is a lot worse. So, yes.
Hi, you touched on something. I know cancer are cells to some extent, but there are sometimes aberrations of the surface proteins, NHC, you know, weird things in the clubs there. Where are we with using the immune system and actually immune surveillance of killer cells and so forth, or if we're using antibodies that are modified a little bit in terms of prostate cancer or other cancers?
Excellent. I love, so if there's one thing that you can take home, this is where we need to understand that the immune system, when I talked about your body fighting all these things, infection and disease, your immune system is an army of your body. Okay. And for a long time, we physicians or even scientists felt that the immune system had no role in cancer. And we're dead wrong. Dead wrong. In the last 15 or 10 years, actually more than 10 to 5 years, the immune therapy has really taken off in terms of curing cancers as well. And the issue here is, listen, the immune modulation of your body is what tells, it's almost like a surveillance that tells your system what's going on. And cancers are notorious for evading the immune system so that they hide that the immune system doesn't recognize them as foreign. So today we begin to use targeted treatments to unmask, we call it inhibition, the body's inhibitory influence on the immune system so that the immune system can now see the cancer. So you take away that hidden glass veil that doesn't let us see the tumors and then allow the immune cells to go in. And to that point, there's a recent study in 2015 that showed us each cancer and the tumor immune burden. And prostate cancer was somewhere in the middle. So it's not a strong immunogenic tumor, then it isn't really poor, somewhere in the middle. And so we are beginning to use genomics to tell us immune expressions that we can now target with them. And this is what's going on in the field now. Yes. Yes.
Hi. So I know a person that got tested for the BRCA gene. She was positive, so then she went ahead and did the same thing as Angelina. She took the breast out and then her uterus. A month later, she was still, the doctor told her she could still get the cancer. She could. And so do you think it was worth it, even like, getting tested, removing her, or
So she could, because as I showed you, there was still that 2%, 10%, 11% even in the general population. When you do those surgeries, you don't take away your risk of the general population. You just decrease the risk of that big jump, right? So yes, she's decreased her risk tremendously, but it's still not to 0%, right? Because there is that trailing percentage that you can't do anything about. It's the general population, and you cannot do anything about that percentage. That's where the doctor was telling you, right? The 2, 8, 11%, that's general population. So that's still a risk that is still there, because even though you've taken the ovaries and the breast and these tissues are not totally, especially because some of them are like they're basically microscopic level. No surgeon, no scalpel can take out all the microscopic cells, right? So there's still that risk. It's very, very low and nothing to worry about, but it's not zero. Basically, no doctor can tell you there's no chance that you're ever going to get it. That's totally what it is. It was worth it. Because of that, it was worth it. Again, it's an individual purpose, individual decision. She could have said, I'm going to just undergo strict monitoring every 6 months or whatever. That's fine too. It's just a lot of headache. So suppose you don't just, not have to worry about it. So it's an individual decision, but it was still worth it because the numbers show for it. It's greater than 80% reduction. I think it's worth it. But again, it doesn't mean that someone who did not do it and went on just a steady monitoring, making sure that if it does okay, we treat, is doing the wrong thing either. Not the same risk though. The risk is much lower now. Yeah. Sorry.
So you mentioned that we have targeted treatment that can attack the cells that intend to masculine cells from the immune system to evade that. So what is the likelihood that that targeted treatment may create some sort of propensity to an autoimmune effect where the immune system attacks healthy cells as well as the cancerous cells?
Very good question. That's a very, very good question. This is why immune therapy is it's such a difficult field and it takes such a long time with research, because you have to make sure that you get a balance right. Because anytime you're masking the immune system, you might also expose yourself to other immune problems. And the most commonly used immune therapy, or nivolumab, or people you see the news and everything like that, we have to make sure that we watch these patients for other autoimmune problems in the gut that can occur. And if they do, there are certain strict criteria to prevent that from happening. Everything is in the scale, right? So you don't get full-blown autoimmune problems. You get some immune overreactivity, we call it. Just get overreactive and you kind of adjust your dose like that. But that's a very, very good question. Yes.
What the second means, it's a different type of cancer evolve or relapsing the same thing?
Second. Yeah, so when it says second breast cancer, it means that you can get, so in the treatment of breast cancer, you can do a lumpectomy where you just take out the lump, but the breast still remains. You can get breast cancer in that same breast, or even on the contralateral breast. So that's what a second breast cancer means, meaning that it can occur again, not from the primary recurrent side, but totally different side from the primary side.
Kind of a metastasis, you can say.
So metastatic has to be from the primary side going elsewhere. But when it's not from the primary side and a totally different side, then that's the second one. Yes.
So I'm taking the last question, or two. Do you have your hands up? Okay. I'm just going to take the last question, and you could really email Dr. Yaboa. He's very good at answering emails. So.
Yeah, the last question.
Yeah, he got the last question.
Alright, so there's a saying that, or I heard that sex is an exercise, right? And then they said that too much of sex also enlightens your posture and gives you cancer. How true it is?
It's not true. So there's a lot of. It's simply not true. So the thing is, it's not. It's always. This is the biggest issue we have with correlative studies, right? If you engage in high-risk sexual behavior, you're likely to get infections and inflammation of the prostate through whatever it is, gonorrhea, syphilis, whatever. That will create insults in the prostate and can lead to other diseases, including cancer, right? The problem is not the sexual cancer, but it's the high-risk behavior, right? Otherwise, then all people in monogamous relationships also all getting prostate cancer. It's not true. It's just the high-risk behavior that leads to infection, and inflammation leads to insults in the cells, and insults in the cells, mutations to that. So you can say, oh, because of that, then intercourse or sex causes cancer. No, that's a straight. Yeah. All right. That's a good way to end it, I guess.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. So we now invite our Dean Cardona to give us some highlights of other events scheduled for today, and our SGA President, Mr. Piano Diallo, who will give us a closing remark. So let's invite Dean Cardona first.
Thank you, and I want to thank the guest speaker for a very enlightening presentation. We have a number of activities that are coming in and out associated with Hostos Science Day, and I want to make sure that you're all aware of them. We have student researchers who are doing their presentations in room C 391 from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We have natural sciences program information tabling at the bridge at 4 o'clock on Tiltroy. So they're there now. We have student poster displays specifically on cancer issues, the topic of discussion today, and that will be at the atrium at the bridge. In addition, you can have access to an online presentation on bioprospecting, the social security from nature. So there are a lot of events. Please engage in them. Many of the research presentations are for your fellow students who engage in year-long projects and presented it at a summer symposium. So enjoy the day and enlighten you guys.
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoy your listening today. So, I would like to thank first Dr. Alain, Dr. Anna Mandian, and Dr. Guillaume Piao, and the organization committee for giving this opportunity to me to speak, not for myself, but on behalf of the whole student body here also, and making this event possible. I would also like to thank and acknowledge our guest speaker, Dr. Kosiyamo, for this wonderful presentation. And I hope everyone has learned about regenerative medicine. When I received this message saying I was invited to give a closing remark for the Science Day event, I just replied, thank you for the invitation. I first thought it was the Science Club, then I realized it was Dr. Lam who sent the invite. When I received the agenda and I saw the President, Dr. Gomez and Professor Christine Mentino would be speaking, I realized how important this opportunity is. I'm excited and honored to be here today. As a STEM student, taking time to celebrate science is a good thing because our life is becoming easier than it was years ago because of the technology development there. Our hard working and studies are preparing us to make a difference in the world. To finish, I would like to invite you, especially the STEM students, to the STEM Olympiad hosted by the STEM Government Association. It will be this Thursday at 1:45 in the TFC room. And thank you for attending the event, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. And don't forget to sign in for the student outside. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you all so much, and that's the end of our opening ceremony for Science Day. Good job. Students have presentation.
That's like kind of like a long time.
Wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all around. Bye, everyone. And students that have to sign, the signing sheet is outside. You can go, your professor's names are on the sheet, so you can go outside and sign.